I don't know what you thought about the evening so far, but it's going to get better here in just a couple of minutes. If it's been good, it's even going to get better because we have the wizard coming in to speak to you tonight. He's the man of, well, he's the speaker of all speakers. He's the honcho of this organization, and I think you're going to get a great deal out of it. Before we do anything else, let's get the queen of all prayers, Miss Edia, to give us a quick roundabout. Would you please stand?
Shall we stand to honor God? Well, merciful God, our Father, we thank you, we honor you, and we bless you tonight. We have just come through a holiday that once again reminded us, some of us, of the pain. Some of us were from the greatest generation. Some of us, our parents, were from that generation. And once again, we hit Iwo Jima. And once again, we hit D-Day. And it wasn't always pretty. For some of us, my classmates, Lord, you know about the Nam. You know about how many went and how many didn't come back. And when they did come back, what kind of conditions they came back in. Lord, you know there's a pall over this country over this time of year. You know that. And then there's my daughter's war. The vets coming back from Afghanistan in all kinds of conditions, in all kinds of situations, needing mental help, needing all kinds of things. Some who fought and died for this country can't even find decent housing. It's ridiculous. Lord, there's a lot of things that make us angry, make us fired up, but there's also a lot of things that make us thankful. They make us grateful. They make us want to praise you. You've been so good and so kind as to let us gather together this night in this place. We could have been a lot of other places, but you provided this place. You provided all these people to help us, to advise us, to help us with resumes, to prepare us for interviews. We just thank you. We just thank you. And then you're bringing forth another gift. We thank you for his life. He's been such a servant leader among us. We thank you for his life. We thank you for his ministry. And we thank you for his service that he's done among us. Lord, we just overflow with gratefulness. And we give you once again praise, honor, and glory because you're the only one who do that. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. How about that for a little power in the evening? Yeah. Hey, you guys go ahead and sit down. We're going to do a little exercise here just for a second. Did everybody have a good and healthy Memorial Day weekend? Now raise your hand if you had a good and healthy one. You're a bunch of fibbers. How many people ate too much? Okay, I want everybody to stand back up real quick. Stand back up. The first person you make eye contact with, I want you to walk over to them and I want you to tell them exactly what you had on Memorial Day that made you smile. The one dish that you had that made you smile. Your name and one dish. Go make it happen. Okay, as soon as you're done with the exchange, sit back down. Yep. Some of you had a lot of good things to eat. I can tell that right now. Some of you had a lot of good things to eat. Okay. One more a little exercise. If you are a volunteer in the organization here at CNM, if you run a table, if you do any form of ministry, I'd like you to raise your hand right now, if you would. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give them a round of applause, please? Very grateful for everybody stepping up. Thank you. We got a couple of announcements. Before I do that, is there anybody smoldering with a job announcement? Anybody that's sitting on one that they actually got a job and they're ready to talk about? and do a little bit of a pitch tonight on? If you, yeah, 2 opportunities, or do you have a job?
I have 2 jobs, 2 searches I'm going to tell everybody about. 2 job opportunities.
All right, well, let's hold that. Just hold the thought for a second. Francine, would you come on up and give your announcement wherever you are?
Hi, there's a employment expo for those of us who are 50 plus at the Fairfax County Government Center on Friday, this coming Friday, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now the full announcement, I posted something on the Career Network Ministry LinkedIn discussion group last week, and the title is 50 Plus Employment Expo. So the information, the link to the event with the PDF flyer, etc., is there. So look. Oh, there's a flyer. Anthony has it. Anton has it. He only has one. So anyway, so go to the discussion group for Career Network Ministry. The post is there for you to look at. Hope to see all the 50 plus there. It's free. Does not require pre-registration. They said to dress for an interview and to bring at least 5 copies of your resume. It's workshops and employers' tables there. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Susan, do you have one announcement?
Good evening, everybody. For those of you who know me, I started my own boutique search practice. I've been a fully incorporated company since April 14th. So I started my own company. I made a decision that I had 3 simple criteria. Take on work I can execute and do well on, exceed expectations. Number 2, make money. Number 3, have a life. So those are my criteria for work. And I also wanted to think out of the box. I place leaders in sales, marketing, public relations. So I'm going to tell you about 2 sales opportunities, and coming from an executive recruiter, this is very rare. Because for these 2 opportunities, you don't have to have experience. Key word, you do not have to have experience in this industry. I have sought out organizations that want to grow, because those are the folks that want to hire leaders in sales, marketing, public relations. And I recently connected with one of the fastest growing real estate organizations in all of Northern Virginia. And I approached the person who started this group, this team, and I said, you want to grow, have you ever thought about using an executive recruiter? Well, this is an out-of-the-box woman who's done extremely well, and she said, never thought of that, let's talk. So they have retained me as an executive recruiter, and I have 2 different opportunities that I'm helping them with. This is a woman that took a look. She hired the #1 real estate agent in the entire world. He's out of Canada. She paid him $30,000. He came to Northern Virginia, and he sat down with her, and he told her why real estate agents fail. 2 reasons. They don't have a steady source of leads that keep from the highs and the lows, and number 2, they don't have administrative support. So she hired somebody out of the venture capital world who's a business process expert who built an organization to provide exactly that. They have full administrative support. These folks don't even go out and put up signs for open houses. They built 18 different kinds of internet and otherwise based leads. And they built an inside sales team, full-time sales force, that all they do is nurture these leads and set appointments for real estate agents. Flash forward to today, they built the team. They have so many leads, they cannot handle them. So I'm helping them find 12 realtors between now and the end of the year. They will guarantee in writing that if you follow their system, you will make $200,000 your first year. Full administrative support, full marketing support, and they want full-time real estate agents. So that's one opportunity. The second opportunity is a base plus bonus. It's very rare in real estate. They have so many leads now on the listing side, they want to add a listing agent. So they want somebody who will come and shadow their most successful listing agent for 5-6 months. They'll pay you a base plus bonus. You're going to get your real estate license, and they'll turn you into a listing agent. Potential the first year is between 75 and 150, second year 200 or greater. And when you're ready to transition, you'll go from a base plus bonus to a full listing agent. So if you want any information on these, all of my contact information, of course, Bob, is on my LinkedIn profile. So all you have to do is go to Sue Butler, CXO Resources, and I'm happy to tell anybody here about these opportunities.
Thank you very much. we actually get quite a few folks coming in with the insurance industry that are looking for folks, and we don't have any tonight, but I have never actually had anyone talk about real estate opportunities that are so well flushed out. And that's got some seed corn in it, so something to think about. Does anybody have a victory lap tonight? Is there anybody that we missed in the process? Anybody get a job and wants to share about it tonight? How about that? Come on down. This is all one.
Thank you, John. I owe everyone here my victory lap because everyone's helped me, and that's the only reason I got it. So I recently got a job. Actually, I got 3 job offers and was lucky enough to be able to negotiate with each of them and choose the best one. That is the first time in my entire life that has ever happened, but
all right.
So I am a recruiter, and I recruit for an international development company, and I hire finance, engineers, communications, customer service, accountants, program management, really a whole range of fields. Companies, it's a small organization based, well, maybe not that small, about 400 million, I guess. In Roslyn. It's based in Roslyn, and a lot of their work is overseas, so that's the downside, of the reality of the positions, but they do have positions here in the United States. So I am on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to speak with anyone. And I would say the way I got these jobs is by watching specialized job boards that have jobs in my field, but even more importantly, looking for people at the companies where I saw the job, connecting with them on LinkedIn, just like what we're taught here, customizing my resume exactly to fit that job, talking to everyone in the company that I possibly could, and getting referred to the job out of all the other job applicants, because there were certainly plenty of very good people, and certainly people who were better than I was for that particular job, but I was able to find somebody and get to know somebody in the company, and I got referred for the job, and that's how I got it. So you all can do exactly the same thing. So that's my victory lap. Thank you, and I really got it because of all the stuff I did.
Okay, are there any other announcements? All right, tonight's speaker is a very special man, and those of you who are not really familiar with it, well, why don't we take a minute just to find out who's really not familiar. If you're wearing a red name tag, would you stand up for us for a minute? These folks' first nights, what do you say? Let's give them a warm welcome. Thank you, and I do hope you'll come back. And after you listen to this next gentleman, I know you'll be drawn back in. Of all of the speakers that we get in here, this guy's credentials are unquestionably the best. He's bought and sold more companies. He's hired more people than probably any 2 people that you'll ever meet. And his topic tonight. His topic tonight is the keys to your next job, networking and interviewing, how to be 25% better at both. It's my estimation that that's an understatement by a factor of 10. The guy is a master of networking, and the more you get to know him, the more you're going to realize that he's got gifts that you're going to have to hang on to. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to the man behind the curtain here at CNM, Bob Korzeniewski. Hey.
All of you guys who have heard John Venable speak know that he's the guy you really want to hear. So John is speaking in a short few weeks, so you want to make sure you don't miss that. I know we had some folks have a really interesting meeting the other day, so before I speak, especially since I have a cold and I'm losing my voice, I thought maybe we'd get some of them to tell us a little about it, maybe even Will would tell us a little bit, but I know Will and Mary and Will and Francine all got to pay a visit down to the White House, so I thought they would maybe share with us what that was like and take a couple minutes and do that. You want to tell us? You want to speak a little bit there, Mr. Stanley?
Sure, sure.
I don't know if we have another handheld microphone around.
Let me pull this over here.
We'll get one, I'm sure, in a moment. In the meantime, can you use your microphone? There's one coming.
Standing in front of the camera for the cameraman. There was 4 of us that went down, job seekers, and then plus Mal, that went down for long-term unemployment to speak to the Secretary of Labor, Tom Perez, and there was 14 of us in the room. There was I think it was either 3 or 4 organizations. I don't remember. I think the others were government organizations. I think we were the only Christian organization, and also we were also the only volunteers. The rest of them were actually the recipients of whatever the government had. But basically, we got to just to talk to the Secretary of Labor personally. They were asking questions and different things. Me being from the military, I actually stood up. I had a prepared briefing, I had a quote, I had my story, and I had 3 recommendations. So I pretty much just was prepared to brief the Secretary of Labor, and I did. Initially, when Mal asked me to go, I'm a very introverted person, and I don't like the spotlight. I don't like to be on the camera. I like to be behind the camera. And so I told him, I said, no, I really don't want to go. This is, I've been to so many different briefings in the, to 4-star generals, 3-star, 2-star generals, and you see stuff briefed, and you put your heart into it, and then nothing ever happens. And I said, and I feel like that's probably what's going to happen here. And he goes, no, we've actually been there. We've had stuff that's actually come about from some of the stuff that we've gone and spoken to him about. I was like, Mel, if you believe that it's going to make a difference, I said, I'll go. And, upon my speaking with my wife and my parents, they were all saying, go, go, go. And I was like, no, I really don't want to go. And so they said, you need to go. The opportunity for you to be able to go and speak to someone who sits on the cabinet of the President of the United States is an honor. So I went, and I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to stand up and give all the information to them, all the people that were in the room. And then after I gave my story, it was so emotional for me, I actually broke down and cried about halfway through my story. I was actually the only, there were veterans that were in the room, but I was the only one that had just retired from the military and was my last real job was the military. So the Secretary of Labor, after I finished, pretty much came straight to me and shook my hand and said, thank you so much for sharing your story. And me being an introvert, when I got to work at 3 p.m., it felt like 3 a.m. because the energy had just been drained out of me for sharing that story with them. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Well, I'm going to talk about a couple different subjects. I end up having lots of meetings with people throughout the year, and I find that I generally am focused on 2 things, even though everyone comes from a completely different perspective. And it could be different industries, and it certainly is different jobs, and it's certainly different circumstances, but we generally get down to networking and interviewing. Because my first question is generally, are you getting enough opportunities to interview and not getting a job? So how many people would put themselves in that bucket where they're getting enough interview opportunities and not getting a job? I see a few hands. So it's, and that's about the percentage. I'd say it's less than 10% of people that say, I'm getting enough interviews, but I'm not getting a job. And then it's pretty easy. We just focus on interviewing. And I'm generally pretty amazed how easy it is to improve the interview process for people that are in that category. But for most of us, it's how are we going to get more activity? This is a pretty tough game to get more activity. So before I talk about, and I'm only going to give a few ideas, I'm always tempted to just put 50 networking ideas, but then we never get to them. It's going to be hard enough to get to 2 topics tonight. But what from a networking perspective, has worked for you guys in the room? Obviously, you come here, so that puts you ahead of about 90% of the people that are in job transition, in that you're out both trying to improve some skills and meet some other people, right? Which is a big part of the game. But what else would anyone want to share with me that has worked for you guys from a networking perspective? Najwa?
My alumni club's been helpful.
College alumni?
Yes.
So college alumni. Francine?
Professional organizations dealing in the field that I
Professional
work in.
organizations?
The great thing about professional or industry organizations is that the people who attend are employed.
Right.
And they know about jobs.
Right.
So it's really a fertile place to network.
Good.
Your top 50 contacts. I found that going through my own personal contacts that people have moved on to other positions and things in several of my target companies. So your top 50 contacts.
Reaching out to people you know best.
Yes.
Kind of that could be most helpful. Anything else? You know, yes. Back.
Co-workers, either current or former. Actually my best job was through a current co-worker
Really powerful.
with a different.
Yep, really powerful. So we'll talk about a few other things, but that's the first half of my presentation, so we'll move on to the second half. But it's, let's see if I can get this to go forward. All right, Dave, am I pointing at the wrong place?
It is turned on, correct?
Yeah, it's green. You want to move it from back there? Abracadabra, he's going to figure it out. Well, I'll get started while he's doing that because I think I know what it says. There you go. So why are these the two topics we're going to talk about? Is very few resumes are strong enough to play the resume game. You know, if there's 100 resumes submitted for a job and they're going to talk to 5 people, you got to be top 5%. And as we get bigger, more than 100, we're talking a low percentage. Little easier when it's an entry-level job. I see some at least recent college grads in the room. They have a better chance of playing the resume game, a little better. But as we get more experience, it gets harder. Right? And in today's world, we know they want everything, so they can try to be picky and at least try to do that. So that's a tough way to play. And what we're all about is taking you out of the resume game and putting you into the networking game. Right? So we want to be on that short stack, and everything we do is about that short stack. And when you think about everything that's in the front, so it's everything from resumes, which we spend a lot of time on, and we have some great people that continually give advice, right? And we have resumes and interviewing and marketing plans and LinkedIn and social media and all the things we do on the upfront part. And then we get to the interviewing stage and we basically don't ask for any help. Yeah, we go listen how we should do it, but we pretty much say, I got it. So this whole bucket where everything we're doing is basically to get an interview. But when we get to the interview, we say, I got it. Don't worry, I don't need any help. Generally. So we'll talk about that tonight. All right, my clicker is maybe not going to work there. There we go. So the thing about networking, when we look at the definition, and we're talking about cultivation of productive relationships, it's so hard to do if our focus is on people that don't know us. It's not impossible, and there's lots of stories of people who have done it. But I always try to take people back, and we heard it already a couple times when we opened it up, back to people that know you best. Because it's a relationship that you don't have to work to gather trust and confidence. They already have it. So now we can come up with the basic ask in that relationship instead of trying to develop it. Right? We got to do both. Much the same way we have to try to get targeted resume submittals, we also have to submit resumes over the transom. We have to do both. And here we have to go to that core network. That's where we want to start, people that know us best. Because if 70% of jobs or more come from networking, take a few minutes to think about how you're spending your time. if you're spending 10% of your time on networking and 90% of it doing other things, when the model is 70-30, you got to think about that. How do we make our networking time? 70% is probably too much for most of us to do. Right? But we want to invest a little bit more time in getting into that short stack. Because I would rather have 5 resumes hand carried in by someone that works at a company, than submitting 50 or 100 over the transom. It's just going to improve the probability that much more that a human being looks at your resume and probably at least calls you for a phone screen. That's their objective. So, how do we get started? I generally tell people, are you ready to network? You're ready. There's some basic things I think you should do before you even start, and most of these, hopefully most of you guys have done. You have your resume, it's been reviewed and finalized. I know we review them a lot. I just don't know if you come back and say, I made all those changes that you told me I should make last week, what do you think now? So that we get closure in that resume process. That, John Venable's team over here, and for those of you who haven't heard him speak on elevator pitches, it really is a game changer, the way he can take a short description of what you want to do and what you've done and present it in such a way where it's engaging. That's a really unique skill. But it's something you should feel comfortable with so that you're using it wherever you are. Marketing plan, which Francine and team do every week, and on second Tuesdays do a workshop, it really helps you get a little more targeted on who are the companies you'd like to work for if you had a choice. So you can do some targeted networking. And I even think you have to do some form of interview prep before you do networking. Because I think every networking interaction is an interview. Right? Whether it's sitting at a table now, or whether it's having coffee with someone, some of those same questions are going to come up in the process. And if you've gone through the prep for that, it's a very both comfortable way of having that exchange, and it's practice. Boy, I'd much rather go through some informal interview process over coffee than have it be the interview that counted, where I want to be at my best. Right? And so we're going to talk about prep later on. And then I know most of you have cards, but I had business cards and thank you notes as kind of a requirement to start networking. And not that people are going to want your card, but you want theirs. So the easiest way you get theirs is to give them yours, and they give you theirs. Yours may find its way into the trash, but you have theirs, right? And all the follow-up activity is really up to you, and so you want to be able to get that piece of paper. And I am a big believer in handwritten thank you notes. I know a lot of people here are as well, because we all talk about it. But every time we have a recruiter panel, every time, the recruiters say, we get so few thank you notes that when we get them, we send them around the office. And I see Sue shaking her head, and I just can't believe it, because I'm thinking just CNM people must overwhelm them with thank you notes. But it still doesn't happen. I think we're in this email stage where we think, I sent the email, and I had to do that, so that's good. I don't need to send a note anymore. And I think whenever we have a chance to differentiate ourselves in the process, we want to take advantage of it. And one of them is the handwritten note. So I think it's really important. Where we're at? Which one do you think? Are you doing that, or am I doing that? You're doing that. So good, we're on to the next one. We're on to the next one.
You try.
Oh, want me to try? It worked. Because on that slide I just left, because I put network and impress. Because you can go through a lot of numbers of just checking off the numbers. It's kind of like I submitted 50 resumes, I should feel good. And if I tell you, well, let's start measuring our success by face-to-face meetings, well, you actually could probably get yourself ready to go have a bunch of face-to-face meetings. Maybe hard, maybe real hard for some people. But again, if you don't come out of that meeting with the desired goal, which is I impressed that person. I impressed them that I had an idea what I wanted to do, I was organized, I was focused, right? And we actually had a pretty good exchange, and with that person, refer me on to another person. Right? That's what we want to get out of all those meetings. And so that's why I said that little package, which hopefully most people have, really gives you the chance to impress people, I think. So I think your network would love to help you. Who believes their network would love to help them? That's probably 50% plus. So that's great. I mean, your network would love to help you. I find most people don't have the right ask. The network is very afraid of, help me find a job. Very afraid of help me find a job. It's very supportive of, if there's something I can do to help you, other than help you find a job, let me know, because I'd love to do that. And within your network, you probably have some percentage of people that would like to help you find a job. But for a good percentage of your network, you'll scare them with that, because they're not sure how to do it. You know, HR people know how to do it. Some hiring managers might have an idea how to do it, but most people don't. So, what's the right ask? How do I reach out? Who do I reach out to? We're going to talk a little bit about that. So, Melissa talked about the top 50 here. I've done top 25. I've dialed it back a little. Normally I say 50. I used to say 100. But I'm trying to think. I'm in the job search process. I want to know who's my personal board of directors. So think about it as your personal board of directors, and you can pick 25 people to be on your board. Not another person. Just these 25 people are going to help you find your next job. Who are they? That's what I would start with. I know when I've met with people before, and they've come back with their list, especially when I usually say 50. If you've had more years of working, I would still encourage you to be more than 25. But if you had 25, I would take your resume and I'd say, okay, how many of them are from this job? How many of them from this job? How many from this job? And we go down your job list and try to make sure that we got a good cross-section of people that you used to work with. Then clearly some of them are going to be friends, potentially family, potentially other people that you know. But I want to make sure that a good portion of your personal board of directors can speak to the fact that they worked with you. Because that will be the most powerful referral. Now, I've been a referral for a number of people, and I can think of several people who got down to the final few candidates, and someone called me up and said, what do you think? And I could talk about their personal attributes. But when they said, did you work with her? And I had to say, I've never worked with her. I know them in a different way. And I still think that did you work with them is far and away the most powerful thing, if you have that card to play. So, I like to take this group of 25 and 50 and now carve them into an A, B, and a C. Right? A's being the people I think can be most influential, B's, and then C's. And I'm going to send all of them a note. And my ask is going to be for them to introduce me to other people. Because that's the ask that virtually everyone can do. And if I believe that my next job is coming from networking, then I'm going to get ready to get face-to-face with as many people as I can. For some people who are maybe a little more introverted, you can do more of it via email, or you can do more of it on the phone. If more of your contracts maybe aren't as local, there are other ways of doing this, but I strongly encourage face-to-face interaction. So my estimate used to be that you got a 10x improvement in phone over email and a 5x improvement in face-to-face over the phone. So if I can go from email to face-to-face, I'm potentially getting 50 times more information if I did that over an extended period of time. The greater I personalize that note, higher response rate I'm going to get. I don't know how many of you get, I get notes and it's a BCC that talks about someone in transition, but as far as I know, it could be going to 100 or 200 or more people. I generally assume, I guess the other 80 people can help, unless it's someone I know really well. But when I get it and it's specifically addressed to me and has some small reference to something we might have done before, it's no different than a LinkedIn request from that perspective, right? We're really big on personalizing LinkedIn requests, and here's the same thing. The more I can personalize that note, my response rate's going to go way up. Right? And for the C's, I might just send it to the C's and see what the response is. But for the A's and the B's, I'm going to put down the bottom, and I'll give you a call in the next couple days to catch up for 5 minutes. They know a phone call's coming. I just want to engage. I know they're my important part of my network. I want them to know they are. I want to ask for their help. I want to tell them a little bit about what I want to do and see if they can connect me to somebody else. And I think if you go through this exercise, you're going to get good results out of it. You're going to get good results out of it. I think that's where most people next job lies. So, who's on your A team? Alums are generally people you worked with. Is who I'm going to say alums, in this, at least in my categorization here. So you got alums that you know well, and that's probably a group everyone's pretty comfortable reaching out to. You probably have already done that, even if you didn't do this exercise. Alums who are influential, that's probably a group you're less comfortable reaching out to. There might have been, you know, upper management in your prior company. They could have been the head of HR. It could have been the manager of your division. But people that would know you and you would have interacted with, but you may not have as deep a personal relationship. Alums or friends in your lane, and stealing some of Shara Harrington and John's language from a few weeks ago. So, you know, they have the same job. They're accountants and you're accountants, right? And they're gone somewhere else, but used to work together. Alums who are in the same industry. You know, they're in government contracting, in the secured side of government contracting, and so are you. They're going to be really important. Super connectors, and you know, you can generally tell them on, used to be you could say you could tell them on LinkedIn when they had 500 more connections. Now that's getting to be a bigger set of that population, but you know, people who tend to know a lot of people, and they can be really helpful in this process. And your closest friends. To me, that's my A group. And what I've seen talking to people that go through this process, they reach out to about half of their A group, but it takes a long time, because they want to call them, or they want to see them, or they want to connect with them in different ways. So that process gets stretched out. Then they get to the B group, and they get to about 30 or 40% of them, and that process gets stretched out. And they never touch their C group. Right? And so the C group, people that you know, that you've worked with, that are friends of yours, that are associates, they may not even know you're in transition. And they may have had an opportunity that they realize is someone that you should meet, and we haven't given them the opportunity to help. So I'm trying to get focused on all of these. All right, there we go. Oh. So I've shown this one before for those of you who are here. This is actually something that my daughter wrote when she got out of school several years ago. And I know it's going to be hard to read, so I'm going to read it real quick, just some parts of it. So she sent it out to 50 people back then. I just wanted to update you on what I'm doing. I moved back home. I'm taking the last few tests to finish my elementary education certificate. I'm currently applying to the substitute teacher in Fairfax and Loudon. She graduated in December, tough time to be a teacher. And I'm looking into private schools in Northern Virginia as well. I'm hoping to find a full-time teaching job starting in the fall, but would definitely be interested if a job opened up earlier than that. I've attached my resume and some pictures from my student teaching with my 1st and 6th graders. If you have any suggestions or other contacts, I would love to get your thoughts. I'm especially interested in talking to people that teach or substitute teach in any of the school systems. Thank you so much. So I think for she gets a pass. She's right, because she just graduated. She did it to everybody. She didn't personalize it, but she just graduated from college. She gets that pass. But she sent it out to everybody. And 2 days later, she got a note from someone that said, "Julia, my wife's an assistant kindergarten teacher at a brand new elementary school, right? We live in Great Falls. This was in Herndon. First grade teacher's going on maternity leave starting next week. Why don't you come in and interview? Here's the 5 things you should do. And she was the first one to interview. They said be 10 days before they make a decision. They called her up the next day and offered her the job. So she went from, I hope to run around like a wild person, substitute teaching at any school that might call me on any given day, to having her own first grade classroom for the next 4 months. Because the person that responded was a C contact, someone she would have never sent a note to. And she sends that note out broadly, and instead of just a connection, she's just asking for a connection. Because when you're asking for a connection, everyone knows you're looking for a job. We don't need to waste that wish with the genie. The wish is, I want to help you feel good about yourself. Who do you know that I should be? Because I'm willing to go anywhere and meet him. And I know along the way I'm probably going to kiss some frogs with that sort of attitude, but people that know me best, you know, because you never know where that job is coming from. And in her case, a C contact, John Sadisher, we all go teach over at George Mason. Many of us get to go over there and speak at his class where he runs a class like this for seniors at George Mason. He sends her a note, and she ended up starting her teaching career. This one's a little different. So dear Bill, I hope this email finds you and the family well. It's been a while since we caught up. I wanted to share a brief update. After 5 great years at SAIC as a project manager for a contract at EPA, we lost our recompete, and I found myself in transition. I realized my next job will come through networking, so I'm reaching out to a small group of trusted advisors for their thoughts. I would like to stay in the government contracting arena as I have 15 years experience, a CPM certificate, and a top secret clearance. I would appreciate any thoughts on folks you might connect me with in that very broad space as I try to extend my network. I'll try to call you later this week for a brief chat. There's lots of versions. I'd call that still not highly customized, but you know, clearly a connection. I told them enough about myself. Some people might put their LinkedIn profile as an attachment. Some people might put a resume just as for reference. Some people might have a marketing plan. Some people might be a little specific on who it is they want to work for more than, but I gave them enough info there for them to kind of have an idea what they want to do. There we go. So, once we engage them, by the way, does that process seem too hard to do?
No.
Is there anyone who feels like that if I went to their top 25 contacts, they all know your current status? Maybe there is, you don't want to put your hand up because you know I'll ask you another question. So, oh, there was someone over here. Someone said yes?
All of them know?
Do all of them know?
Yes.
Oh, good. And how do they know?
Probably from me, or my family, or my other friends, tell the rest of them.
So you're assuming someone else has told them all, not you? You haven't told them all directly?
Not directly, but I've spoken to them after I found out that they knew.
Okay.
So I know they all know now.
Okay. And how would that be if I took it from 25 to 50?
Yeah, probably not all 50.
And, you know, depending upon how long you worked and what your circle of influence is, I used to say 100. You know, because you think about insurance folks, and I know our friend Clyde had to leave, who's selling financial services. If you get out of school, you're a young insurance salesman, I think they put you in a room and they lock the door and they slide food under it and they give you this form that says, get us your top 100 contacts. You know, and don't come out of the room until you do. And you start, and they have a list, because I think we have it, we used to have it in the back of our CNM handbook. It was an insurance form that had how you figured out your top 100 contracts. And this went through, you know, church and all the different subgroups. So 25, I think, if you've been working for a while, is a small number, but I think it's an important number, so that's why I dialed it back to be something we could all try to wrap our arms around and say, I'm going to go try to do it. Because most of the time I've seen people do this, I've gotten answers like, boy, I didn't realize I had so many A contacts. Or, I was surprised, you told me I wouldn't get much response out of my C contacts, and I got a lot of feedback. Or, boy, the face-to-face meetings have been really helpful. They've kind of given me a boost to get face-to-face with people. because networking's hard. It's hard stuff for most people. You get some guys and gals that are salespeople or business development, that's what they do every day. But for most people, that's not what they do every day, so this process gets harder. But if we can start with people that know us best, and then go from our network into their network. Phil Sneer, who speaks here every now and then, he talks about informational interviews for any of you that have heard that. He kept track of all his meetings when he was in transition, and he had 70 coffee meetings from one person. So he tracked that one person introduced him to 2 people, who introduced him to 4 people, who introduced him to 8 people, who introduced him in that pyramid scheme, which, opens up a whole new network of folks to get connected with. And I remember Ken Ferguson, another guy that used to run a networking table for us a couple of years ago, and Ken said, I'm looking at this as a chance to make new friends. And it seems everywhere I was, I'd see Ken there, having coffee or lunch or something with someone. But I think it is that part to get this network engaged. All of which, by the way, the only reason we're doing all this is to get in the short stack. We're doing a lot of work to get in the short stack, right? A lot of work to get in the short stack because all these cold resumes are tough. But we're doing a lot of work to get in the short stack. So when we get in that short stack and we get the call, we want to make sure we're ready to nail it. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. So you guys probably know this. Get another one you think is going to be even better. Thank you all. So you probably know this. This is for coffee meetings. So whether it's with people you know in your network or whether you've gone outside of your network into their network, which is our goal. Because one of the definitions of success in your meetings is when people you meet with are willing to introduce you further into their network. Right? So we never want to find that ending point. If you're comfortable, you have to ask, who else do you know that you might be able to introduce me to? That's the end of that coffee meeting. And that's what Phil was so good at. He came, he was impressed, he was organized, he was focused. He actually had his own little presentation as part of his agenda. You just went, wow, this guy knows what he wants to do. He always said, wow, who do I know that I should introduce him to? So that was always the next step. First impressions, 92% nonverbal. Have an agenda. I know John Foster, whenever we get together for coffee, he always has an agenda. He always gives me the piece of paper with, this is the agenda for the day. Never once have I met with him he didn't have an agenda. But whether you have it written down on paper, which depending upon the type of relationship is not a bad idea to keep on time and focused, have an agenda in your mind. What do I want to get out of this? What sort of information would I like from this person based upon their job, their industry, your relationship, what you need from them? Have an agenda so you can evaluate it. I'm always pretty impressed with energy and passion. And it's pretty tough in a short period of time to figure out some of the other attributes, but you can pretty quickly figure out, wow, especially these early morning coffees when you're kind of struggling in there and the person's like, whoo, I think they're on their 3rd cup. But it generally is impressive. They really seem excited about doing this. Prepared and focused is interesting. I mentioned John Sadisher, the guy that referenced my daughter to that job. He was in transition at one time, and he showed up with a binder. And he had all the passport steps that we recommend at CNM, and he had his section for each of the passport steps. Done. And another person I met with for coffee, who still holds the record for longest victory lap, but she came and had gone back and realized I had done a presentation a year before. She grabbed that presentation, saw what I recommended, and she took it and put her steps of everything she had done versus all the steps I had recommended. I didn't say you should do that. Now, I'm a little unique in this thing, so that's not true for everybody, but it impressed me she had gone back and done some homework. And you can do that just by knowing something interesting about the person you're meeting with, or doing a little bit of research. Generally, I go to Mason, I tell the kids, did any of you guys look me up on LinkedIn? Didn't you guys even spend like 2 minutes checking me out? And there's usually like one kid in the class that's done something. I'm like, you're the internet generation. But so are we, right? So I would even say, when we publicize who the speaker is, if you don't know them, look them up. Find out a little bit about them. You may find that that person has some interesting connection beyond what you learned that night that you can actually try to do something with. Many of our speakers are open networkers that you can connect with even before they come to speak. Follow up or fail is probably the important one. So I probably failed a lot of people where I walk out of a coffee meeting and, well, they walk out, I stay there. And, and I agreed to do a bunch of things. And I forget, right? And so I generally tell people, I expect you're going to give me an email that's going to remind me what I said I was going to do. And so the follow-up goes 100% people that are in transition, 100%. And I've got some really good ones. I wish I had included a copy. But the basic message is on the follow-up. You should always have more action items than the person you're meeting with. Right? So it's one of these that says, I didn't take anything away from our meeting, but you agreed to do these 6 things. It's just generally a bad formula. So I tell people, make it up sometime. If you didn't take that much away, make it up. You know, you said this, I'm going to go research this. You told me about this, I'm going to go check that out. But make it look like your side of this ledger is longer than the other side. So you got like 5 things you're going to go do, which makes the person feel like, I gave them a lot of good information. Look at all the stuff they got. Didn't think I was that good at that. I thought I was half asleep. But they at least got this agenda where it looks like, boy, I gave you some really good stuff. And then you go, oh, and by the way, you kind of promised me you'd connect me with Will Stanfield, and you promised you would send me, you know, a presentation on informational interviews. And I put in there, depending upon how important this person is, I'd say, and I hope you don't mind if I follow up with you as I'm going through my action items and just keep you appraised. Right? Or for someone who's really important, you might say, maybe we can have a follow-up meeting sometime in the future. Lay that out, get that groundwork out there too. But, and then they don't, you know, if they don't do what they say they're going to do, you got to go back and remind them. And the way I like to remind people is you take that same email you sent them, and on top of it, you put, oh, by the way, I just wanted to update you on my progress. Right? And so you just update them on what you've done, which is a tickler to them. Oh, geez, I told Jeff I was going to do that for him down the bottom. And if they still haven't done it, then when you finish it, you say, I've now completed my action items, and it'd be awesome if you could connect me with Will Stanfield. But we own this process after we meet them. So we've engaged our network, we've gotten them excited. They started meeting with us, whether it be over the phone or face-to-face. Hopefully, they've been impressed enough to then introduce us to some of their network. Right, so that's the uncomfortable. Now we're going from comfortable to uncomfortable because we don't know these people. But really what happens is you start getting closer to people who are even more valuable. Because when I know, right, that a person is looking for a marketing job, right, and I'm not a marketing guy, right, he connected to me because I'm still an A contact, I'm in one of those other categories. Probably the person I'm connecting him to is either a marketing person or it's an industry person, right? I know he's in the nonprofit space and a marketing person. I'm probably thinking nonprofit person or marketing person and go in one of those 2 directions. So you're starting to get closer to where you want to be, and then that next person hopefully says, oh, marketing person, not only in the nonprofit space, but specifically around this part of the nonprofit space, and you start going down that cylinder and getting connected closer and closer to people who can really be helpful with where you want to be. But that's a lot of work. But I think it's work that pays off. So if it's a group meeting, maybe like this one, maybe like other ones, I think getting early is a really interesting angle. And I think it's for everybody, but I'd especially put it there for younger people. but I think it's for everybody. Because you show up and you say, geez, I thought it started. I think I was just chatting with someone that was here at 6 o'clock today, right? But you show up at 6 o'clock and you say, oh, you started at 6:30. You know, there wasn't that much traffic, so I got here early. What can I do to help? And so you haven't quite become a volunteer, but you volunteered a small portion of time. And so you've ingratiated yourself to the people that are there early. Because who's there early? The volunteers. Right? The volunteers in any meeting are the people that are there early. You do 10 or 15 minutes worth of work, whatever that is, someone's going to inevitably say, what can we do to help you? Right? Or who would you like to meet? And instead of going to a meeting of 200 people saying, did I meet the right person that I was hoping to meet, or people, you've immediately gone to the top of the pyramid where someone said, you need to meet Joe Gilly. And you go, I do. I guess I do. You say I do. And someone else has done that connection for you that knows the room. So you didn't have to stumble around the room. And that was for 15 minutes of volunteering that you didn't commit to do next week. You just committed to do it that 1 week. I think it pays off. Always ask for who runs the meeting when you get there. Who runs the meeting, by the way? You can see that on Meetup, if it's on Meetup. But if not, ask the volunteers when you get there and say, oh, would you mind introducing me to him or her, or introduce yourself, depending on the type of meeting. And then that person can also help point you to someone that can be helpful. This is sometimes hard to do in a group meeting. You find someone that you really connect with. But if the purpose is networking, I'd say we have a multi-purpose, here there's education and networking and a bunch of other things, but the purpose is networking. 5 minutes should cover pretty much what you need to do. Get the person's card, send them a link to request, find other ways you might catch up later on, but 5 minutes you've probably got it covered. Move on to the next person, keep on going. And tag team approach for people who are really uncomfortable about these meetings. Get a friend of yours to go with you, and you know what that friend's looking for, and that friend knows what you're looking for. You go in 2 different sides of the room, and you say, hey, Will, I met a guy over there, or a lady over there, you have to come meet. And hopefully, so that now gives you a chance. I only need to work half the room, but I'm not only working it for myself, I'm working it for a person I came with. And we're looking for 2 different things, and we can now interact with each other and bring it into different play. So that I find especially helpful for some people. So this one, that all sounds interesting, Bob, but I have no network. Does anyone feel something? A little bit? Okay. I have no network. I get to talk to a fair number of people who say that for different reasons. I can think of people who have moved here from another state. People I've met from other countries. But the list goes on. And it's harder, but it's far from impossible. Just means that some of the things we talk about, you've got to work them a little bit harder. But some other things that for people that don't have as much of a network, but everyone can use them. I'm a big affinity guy on LinkedIn. So I can think about people, recent college graduates. I remember I talked to a guy from Princeton who had done 5 years in the nonprofit space, and now he wanted to use his engineering degree. Right? He wanted to go work for one of the big government contractors. So we had his target list, and we went to LinkedIn, we put in SAIC as the company, and we put in Princeton as the keyword, and boom, 20 Princeton guys, and Lockheed Martin, and boom, 30 Princeton guys. I mean, if you're from a big school like George Mason around here, you'd have a huge hit. But then I just said, well, you got no network here? Here you go. Reach out to, this is better than going to the Princeton alumni group in DC and hoping one of these guys shows up, and they probably won't. But on LinkedIn, you just identified, you got to have a lot of connections, so this is all going to get into why we try to have as many connections as we can. But he had a big plate of Princeton people to go reach out to, who were certainly going to be willing to meet with him for coffee if he worked them. I had another guy from George Mason, maybe 3 or 4 years out of George Mason. He wanted to be a business analyst, again, government contractor, so that's a big group in this town. So we could be as specific as business analyst, the specific firm he wanted to work for, and George Mason. Still huge hits, 25 or so people at each government contractor that had George Mason, business analyst, and the company he wanted to work for. right? So that's pretty powerful connection when you can get all three of the things you want with affinity. But you got to be a pretty creative person to then take that ball and run with them, right? And you just write a reasonably interesting LinkedIn connection, and if you don't have better than a 50% hit rate with that, I would be really surprised and somewhat disappointed. CNM, all right? CNM, we have, I haven't looked at the latest LinkedIn count, but I guess it's approaching 3,500 or 4,000 people in our LinkedIn group. I'm guessing 1,000 of them are employed, rough numbers. We've had a number of victory laps if someone gets up here and says something happened because someone that was a CNM alum helped them through the process. But I certainly would go, you can go into our LinkedIn group, you can click on, it will list like 3,700 members. Click on 3,700, all the names, all of them come up. And there's a little search box right next to it where I can search the CNM group, just CNM, for anything I want. I can put in, you know, marketing, I can put in IBM, I can put in George Mason University, I can put in anything. And I'd like to think that CNM has more affinity than, you know, your average group that you're a part of. Though being in lots of groups, don't want to do a LinkedIn conversation, because I can't do what those guys can do. But being in lots of groups has some benefits. I mean, it was a lady that was a CNM member. She wanted to work for this company in Chicago. I was only connected to a person in a group that used to work there. And I sent them a creative LinkedIn request. That lady spent 10 hours helping that lady get ready. And when they picked her up at the airport in Chicago, they said, "How do you know her so well? She raves about you." Never met face to face, a LinkedIn group. She got the job. So affinity, I think, is, you know, powerful potential affinity where you could become, through LinkedIn, develop a similar type of thing. So I think it's both an add-on to people that already have a strong network, but if you don't have a strong network, this may be a place you turn to. I'd be interested if I had my target list of companies, I kind of want to know, do they offer employee referral bonuses? That's something you can find out probably on their website, or you can ask someone that works there. Most of them do. A lot of them do. Right? So if I didn't have a strong network and I had to work my way in here, I'd probably be more focused on companies that offer employee referral bonuses, because get someone to carry you into that short stack. So
Definitely not used to that.
there you go. There we go. So I'm stopping on networking. Any questions on networking? Did I cat enough of that stuff? You thought it was great. One person liked it. It's question, Sue.
Yeah, it's not a question. I think one of the things that recruiters hate, and I think other professionals have told you they hate, is when one of the things that we recruiters hate, and that many professionals hate, is that if you reach out to me and we don't have a connection, asking a stranger to introduce you to a stranger is not a good move. How can I introduce a stranger to a stranger?
Yeah.
You're going to have to give me a reason to do something for you.
Right.
And I think a lot of folks do that on LinkedIn. Oh, you're connected to the head of HR at SAIC. Oh, you don't know me, but why don't you introduce me? We're not going to do that.
Right.
We're not going to do that.
Right. So when I'm going through LinkedIn, I'm generally saying, Will, I see you're connected to someone. So I'm generally doing with people I know. But even with the people I know, I'm going to ask him how well he knows the person he's connected to. Is he comfortable enough in that relationship to be helpful? So Sue's point, if I don't know that person, that's tricky. You got to have some sort of affinity to go to the next level. But even if I know that person, I'm not automatically going to assume he's going to connect me to the next person. I'm going to ask him, how well do you know that person? Might you be able to do an introduction? Because there are, you know, LinkedIn has gotten to be such big numbers. Some people know people well, and sometimes they don't. I know when I'm meeting with people, I'll say, oh, yeah, you should really talk to Freddie Donner, right? And I'll know that I say, just use my name, right? So that means I don't need to get involved because I know if you send Freddie a note and use my name, she's going to help her. Other people I'll say, you should really meet Paul Cudahy, but I know I better introduce you. I don't mean that, just using you as an example, Paul. But I know that type of person, I need to do a personal introduction or you won't get the benefit, right? So when you're going beyond your network, I always like it when people say, and Mark Goldstein is one of the best at this. Mark just says, just give me the names. I'll take care of it. He never has asked me to do the introduction for him, and he gets about 100% hit rate. So Mark's with John over in the LinkedIn room most Tuesday nights. He's probably the best person I've seen at that. You know, he finds some background on him, he sends creative LinkedIn requests, he gets face-to-face with them. Yeah, he just sent me a note like last week saying, okay, I've gone through all the list of people you introduced, where's the next list? And I know this isn't, I'm not going to have to say, let me introduce you to these people. But if someone does that to you, and you're going to do the introductions, say, all right, if I send them a note and they don't reply, hope you won't mind if I reach back out to you. I always want to set some expectations so that I don't end up in a block where a person didn't reply, I'm uncomfortable bothering you again. So I immediately say, let me reach out. Let me reach out and try to connect with them, and I'll use your name if you don't mind, but if they don't reply, I'll reach back out to you. So I've talked about that networking thing a number of times. I really want to get people comfortable enough so they can actually go do it. That's why I lowered the number. So try to make that list of people that are most important to you, and let's see if we can get all these people to Mary.
I just wanted to say, I just came from a recruiting conference of recruiters and hiring people. And the number is now 94% of hiring people look on LinkedIn first. So if you're not on LinkedIn, they don't see you. They're going to see other people. And you definitely can connect with people you don't know. I do it all the time, you know, probably partly because of my job, but also I do it in a way of looking at what that person does and saying, I'm really interested and impressed by something that you have done. Everybody's done something interesting. I'd love to learn a little bit more about your industry, or about how you did that, or about the company that you worked for 2 companies ago. And almost everybody will respond. So, but I don't reach out to them and say, I'm looking for a job, will you get me a job?
Right.
They can't. And if I do that, they just won't know what to say. Or they don't know who I am. Even if they do know me, they don't know what to say. So, but if you connect with, and if I connect with them and ask something about them that shows that I did my homework and I'm interested in them, I find that
pretty high percentage.
People respond. Yeah.
And I find I get a very small percentage of creative LinkedIn requests. Right? So when I do get one, I generally accept it, even though I don't accept them with people I don't know. Because I'm talking like less than 5 a year, where I don't know someone and they send me a note, I go, wow. That person went and spent about 15 or 20 minutes of research to find out that information about me. That's not a person looking to see if they can have 10,000 LinkedIn connections, right? And I go, wow, that's really impressive. But it doesn't happen a lot. And I think if there's someone that's important, then you can go do that. And I think it absolutely will work under various circumstances. All right, Najwa.
On LinkedIn,
So I would like personally to improve my LinkedIn profile to the extent that I actually am contacted by recruiters because of my profile.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm going to ask John more about. But I just wanted to mention about 10 days ago I was interviewed for a position based on the recruiter having sent a sourcing note to my sister for a job. She referred him to me. He didn't even ask me for my resume. He only looked at LinkedIn. And he said that he uses LinkedIn more than email. So he spends most of his time on LinkedIn. I thought that was interesting to share.
Yeah. Well, and John and I have talked about this before. I think there's a section of people that need to be there. Everyone needs to have a good profile. And all the stuff we hear from John and Shara and all the other people who talk about LinkedIn is valuable. But there's a subsection of people that need to have amazing profiles because they're the type of people recruiters will be looking for. Then there's another set of people where they're probably not in the sweet spot of recruiters finding you on LinkedIn, and you need to be great figuring out how to use LinkedIn as an offensive tool to do that searching yourself, right? And understanding both is great, but probably, figuring out where am I in that spectrum of stuff. Am I the type of profile that they're looking for, so I got to get as good as I can? Or am I the type of profile I need to use this as a weapon to go find all the people I want to find? So, interviewing. Who thinks their resume looked good the first time they drafted it? We got one. We got one. There you go. That's good. First time I've ever had someone raise their hand. That's great.
Until I got teared apart.
It's good. He liked it. This is the closest analogy I can do for interviewing, and maybe the one that you'll take away with you. Your resume the first time you did it, almost everyone says to me was pretty bad, and it got. And what is it like now? And almost everyone says it's much better. It's not perfect, but it's much better. So people that have been looking for a while, I'd say generally all kind of get in that bucket. And I say, well, how did it get there? Well, I did this draft and, came here or somewhere else where I knew someone that knew a lot about resumes, and boy, they just wrote all over it. It was more red than black. And, I went through 3 or 4 other iterations. And now every time I talk to someone else, they want to change it again. But I like where it's at now, and I appreciate the advice, and hopefully ready to go forward. Well, and I agree with that. And I'm telling you right now that if you don't do the preparation steps we're going to talk about on interviewing, you're interviewing with that first cut resume. You're interviewing with that first cut resume. And that's what I don't want anyone to interview with. It was too much work. All the other we only talked about networking. We didn't talk about all the other components to try to get in that short stack to whether they pick the phone up and have a phone screen or call you in for a real interview. You wouldn't want to be interviewing with that first cut resume, I don't think, right? Well, if we don't do some of these prep work, I think that's where we're going. We're interviewing with that first cut resume, and I don't want that to happen. So let's talk about how we change it. I asked people, do you think you were prepared for that interview you went on? Most people say yes. I said, great. Let me see your answers to the top 20 questions. And general answer is, I've got them, and they're right here. And I go, okay. But I can't help you with them, nor can anyone else help you with them. If your resume was there, it would still look like that first cut resume. So if we can get them out of here and get them on paper, we can make as much improvement as we made in your resume. But we can't get it that way until we get it on paper. All right? So I don't care this number. I put 20. It could be any number that you want it to be. I believe that there's a period in each week that is blocked off for interview prep, even though you don't have an interview. Even though you don't have an interview. Every week. And if you got through this process and you were happy with your top 20 and they were reviewed and tweaked just the way your resume was, you would use some of that time to practice. And if you still had more time, you'd do more questions. So we'd go from 20 to 25 to 30 to 35, because there's a lot of questions out there. We would just, that would be our 1 hour for interview prep. But you would be so ready with just a small amount of time every week in this process, the difference, you would be so excited when someone said, are you ready for that phone screen? Are you ready to come in? You'd be like, because you would feel, it's like that resume we had that resume you thought was pretty good, only to realize how bad it was. And then you saw the end product and you generally said, wow, that is 5 or 10 times better than what I had. It's the same thing that will happen in the interview. I guarantee it, but it's just more work. No, it's not more work, it's different work. It's the same process. So that's step one. But to me, I want to tie in 3 pieces. I want, here are my 20 questions and answers. Here are my star stories. So for those of you who went to the interview breakout earlier or have been here before, it's basically what are your proudest professional accomplishments? I think they would say like 30 or 40. I put 3 to 5, at least get us started. If you don't know what they are, you could hand it to someone and say, what 3 things would you circle on my resume that you think are my greatest accomplishments? Because if you don't have it on your resume, that's a different problem. So the 3 things that jump out on your resume, and then I say to people, when I'm done interviewing you, what do you want me to think of you? When I'm done interviewing Randy, what should I walk away thinking? And most people haven't thought that way about the interview process. They hope that they survive. They hope there's no question that they get asked, that they get stumped. They hope that they feel some form of bond. But I want to sell all the way through the process. And Carlos, as a sales guy, can appreciate that. I want to sell all the way through. I'm going into this interview assuming I got to the top 5. I'm probably not number 1. I may not be number 2. Right? I'm not number 1. So I just can't survive. It's different, you know, if I know someone, I'm going in there and they're making up a job for me, I gotta just not screw up. But most times, I gotta go from not being in first place to first place. So, 3 pieces: my start story, my interview Q&A, and my attributes, my soft skills, right? And then we look whether they all align. When I asked you to talk, tell me about yourself, did I get your strengths? Did I get some of your soft skills? What did I get? Did I sometimes have people say, I want you to think this of me, and I'll look at their answers to the top Q&A, it's not in there. I go, I'm not going to think that of you. I just can't. You have to tell it to me a couple different times. And we generally have a few questions that are potential home runs. Hopefully we have more that we can't miss. We got to hit a home run when they ask us that. And for some of us, we got some tough ones. And we got to make sure when they ask us that tough one that it's not a swing and a miss. We at least got to get the bat on the ball in this process. So this interview prep helps that. So people say to me, what are the top 20 Q&A? And I always say, they're different for everybody. They're different for someone right out of college than they are for someone with 25 years experience. They're different for somebody who's been at 1 company and someone who's been at 5. They're different for technical people than they are for administrative people. But I could ask that every time, so I at least listed some. But you can go, if you've been in interviews, and I don't know how many people do this, but I encourage you, even when you've been in a coffee session, come home and write down all the questions you asked, what some of the answers were. Just keep track of that stuff. If you've been in an interview, stop before you go home, write down what the questions were, write down what your answers were the best you can remember them, just to capture the flow of questions. And think of which ones did I feel like I answered pretty well, which ones maybe I can do better on. But they always say, tell me about yourself, and if we were going to do an exercise, that's the one we do, and see how we can do, tell me about yourself. I had an interesting conversation with a soon-to-be veteran who's currently in the military. Impressive guy, because I met with him one day, and like 3 days later he had all his homework done. He wanted my feedback. And he was having an interview the next day. And he was interviewing for an important business development job. But under Tell Me About Yourself, he talked about managing 5,000 people. So that's natural, that's what he wants to talk about, managing 5,000 people. It's not the most important thing if you're a business development person who's going to be out on your own. And so we had to put the X through Tell Me About Yourself, because it didn't tie into the job that he was going for. And you had to find a way to weave that back into the conversation, but not have that be the thing that might scare his current boss that is used to managing 5,000 people and might not be too happy being out there on his own filling out his expense reports. And he's, you know, he grabbed it and ran with it. I'm sure he did good. But that's one, if you don't have nailed, and it's a layup that they throw out there, and you don't grab it and slam dunk it, the restaurant's probably not going to go too well. That's at least my bet, right? And if they don't ask you that up front, they're not asking you about it. That isn't like the last question. Right? So it comes up pretty early where you have a chance to lay out your strategy, or it doesn't come up at all. But strengths, weaknesses, why you're right for the job, where do you want to be in 5 years, what do you like working on a team, where to call, yes?
Is your Tell Me About Yourself, is that the same as your elevator pitch?
I don't think it is, because your elevator pitch is still too general. I want to look at the job, and I want to figure out what's the most pertinent thing I want to get in front of them that ties my skills and my background into the requirements for the job. So I'm just going to slam dunk that job requirement so that we're right out of the chute that I'm clearly qualified. There is no doubt. And so now we might just want to talk about sports or something else because I'm probably the most qualified person you have here showing up.
It's not a fair fight, right?
Not a fair, that's over. So I've got a lot of questions in case someone wants to look these up, because these all get posted on Meetup, and if you want to know what I think of 20 questions, they're here, but you can Google them. They're all over the map, and I haven't tried to answer them as much as I just tried to list them. And then I list soft skills, you know, customer focus, hard working, fast learner, problem solver, self-starter. You can go through, there's a whole bunch of soft things, but there's also a bunch of info out there that say soft skills are often the reason you get hired, not the hard skills. So if there are soft skills that you have that you're not playing up in this process, we got to figure out how to weave them in with enough examples. I'm an example-rich interview guy. I believe there is no great answer that does not have an example. There is no great answer that does not have an example. There are good answers, quick, literate, bright, responsive, on target, but to be a great answer, I think it's got to have an example. We're winding down, I promise. So on the phone screen, you know, because this is now, I'm surprised how many people get kicked out by the phone screen. You know, I thought it was like, you know, they talk to 7 people and 5 people get in. But I'm hearing numbers that this phone screen eliminates a lot of people. And I can understand if it's for salary reasons, but they don't all appear to be for salary reasons, that phone screen. So we got to be good, step one, before we can be good on the real interview, we better be good on the phone screens, because it seems like almost everyone is doing it. As many people had an interview where they didn't do a phone screen first? Had one?
Last week.
Multiple? Last week?
Yeah.
Had one. Graduate. So it happens, but high percentage of them are phone screening to make sure of some buckets before they go on to the next step. So we got to be good on the phone screen. We've had other people talk, and they say, for the phone screen, you should be dressed so that you feel a certain way. You should be standing, because your voice is different standing versus sitting. You should be on a landline if you have one, because the clarity is better. And I still remember this story going way back. I was at a Starbucks, not my usual hangout, in Tyson's, and multiple people came through this. This lady came up to me and said, "What are you doing here?" And we started chatting, and she had just gone through the Lee Harrison outplacement process and gotten a job, and she said the best thing I learned from them was how to prepare for a phone screen. And she was a believer in the index cards. So she had index cards with her top 25 questions and her answers in bullet forms. She had it laid out on her desk, and she was standing up, dressed. She had that with the landline, But she had her answers all on index cards in front of her, and she said she killed every phone screen. She never had a phone screen she didn't get through. I don't know what that number was. For that worked for her. I think it's different for everybody, but we got to get through phone screens, right? So we got to always be prepared. I should be able to come up and say, all right, phone screen, now, right? And you should always be prepared with you. You may not be prepared with the company and the research on the company, but we always have to be prepared with ourselves, that we're ready to sell ourselves all the time. All the time. Other people do this, they'll say, I have an interview on Friday. I said, great, who are you interviewing with? I'm not sure. I know the company, and I know the HR person I talked to. I'm not sure how many other people I'll be talking to. And we don't want to go there, right? We want to know not only how many people, is it a panel, but the format is, we want to know the names. And the HR people, they want to help you. So they'll tell you all that information almost always, I believe, if you ask. So that you could have done your homework. We looked them up on LinkedIn. We Googled them. We knew something about them. We did everything we can do to be as prepared as we can for all the people that we're meeting along the way. Never want to be surprised that we walk in and there are 2 or 3 people. You know, sometimes it happens, you can't prevent it. But you walk in thinking you're meeting one person and there's 4 people is a little overwhelming. Or you didn't think you were meeting the CEO, and yeah, you are meeting the CEO, and you know nothing about the CEO. That wouldn't be good. You know, I know like the Amazon guys, naturally, they have really high expectations about how much homework you've done on the website before you show up. Very high expectations.
They give you the URLs.
They give them too? Yeah. And some of the stuff like their core values. They're like, you didn't look up our core values? Really?
They're very customer focused.
Customer focused. So different companies, but it's always a good thing to be prepared and knowing who you're interviewing with. So to me, there's a pacing thing in the interview. And you can take that lead from the person that's talking to you. But when the range is really, we're never going to go above 60 seconds. 45 is about right. But when I write down my answers to these things, and I get in the mirror and read it, I'm timing out, because sometimes you put words on a piece of paper, that sounds like a lot to say, and you said it in 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? You said it in 12 seconds, and that's all you got, and it was your best answer. And you didn't take advantage of what could be 45 seconds. I want to take all the time they give me on a good question. Right? So on a good question, I want to make sure my answer is 45 to 60 seconds, and then I want to say, Nashra, did I answer that? Or would you like me to expand upon any part of it? Because it's my home run question. I want to give them a chance to ask me again. Well, could you tell me a little bit more about that time you single-handedly defeated the entire army? And then I get another 45 seconds if they're willing to give me that. But I'm going to ask for it before I do that. Yes?
Since you rekindled my Amazon experience, each of the 5 people that I met with in person asked me for my star stories. And I know they're all obliged to give a report after the interview.
And how do they ask you
So
for
the
it?
challenge becomes, well, tell me about a time when such and such.
Yeah.
So at that point, the challenge becomes, wow, I've got to rekindle my story again and perhaps try to highlight a new dimension. But it's also another clue as to how important it is to have so many star stories.
Yeah.
And you just hope the dimension they're looking for is one that you've got a story for.
Right, and we do workshops just on star stories. So one of the things I like to do is if you have a lot of them, I then put across the top, what 3 what-if questions, or tell me a time when questions, could this one answer? Right? Because this is a marketing piece too, right? So maybe they're going to tell me a time when you had a difficult boss. Well, my boss wasn't too difficult here, but I like the answer. I'm going to play that one into a difficult boss question if I'm asked. So tell me a time when you released a new product, or tell me a time when you had international expansion. But sometimes these individual star stories can have 3 or 4 behavioral questions, which I didn't list a lot of them on there, but there are. some people who do a lot of that. Tough questions, no more than 30 seconds. We want to get out. And I go positive, factual, positive. I give an example that said, I was at VeriSign for a long time, that let's say I got fired, right? And a scenario I like to talk about is a new CEO came in, wanted to hire his own CFO, and I helped him find a replacement and I left. Hypothetical, but let's run with it. And I would say, why did you leave VeriSign? Right, so that's one I don't want to talk about necessarily, maybe. And I say, well, you know, VeriSign was a really wonderful place to be for 20 years, and I got to do an amazing amount of transactions, some I never thought I got to be part of. So positive, right? Factual. But you know, new CEO came in a year ago, wanted to hire his own CFO, and so I was able to help him go through that process, train my replacement, right? Factual. But I can't think of a better place to have been to get the experience I need to do the job you want me to do today. I talked about getting fired, right?
Wow.
But not all that easy. But you can put some spin on them that goes positive, factual, positive. Never a negative. Never a negative, right? Yes, Carlos.
I don't want to practice what you're saying. How important is to practice that? What you just said sounds so natural to people does not come intuitively. It's a practice. Practicing is everything about being able to relay in real time. And it's just critical to...
Well, if you practice it, you're looking forward to it almost. Yeah, instead of like, I can remember you're interviewing someone, you ask them a question and the face goes like this. Oh, I hope he wasn't going to ask me that. But it only comes with that. And sometimes I'll meet with someone and I'll go, okay, I'm looking at the resume, we're going over stuff, we're getting down to bare tactics about reality. And I'll say, until you need to answer this question, you need to work on a good answer, and you need to practice it 1,000 times, then call me. So if, you know, the harder that one question or two questions gets to be, the number of times you need to repeat it grows in that process. So this is my favorite closing question. We've had nearly 100% hit rate with people saying, wow, that's a great question. All right? So when you're done, one of the last things, do you have any questions for me? I encourage people to write down the questions they want to ask, have 5 to 10 of them, and do not be ashamed of opening it up and asking them. It shows preparation, right? And it shows that you're taking it seriously. I think anyone who doesn't, I've never heard anyone who doesn't appreciate that, right? And you've hopefully gone through some of them in the course of the discussion. And to me, this is the third question, right? So you got to figure out how to place it. But it shows a couple things. When I'm lucky enough to get hired for this job and was sitting down for an informal 100-day review, and you say, I've done an amazing job, what will I have done? I want to know, what do they expect of me in the first 90 days? Right? And then I want to be that's really powerful ammunition, both in my thank you letter that I might send back to them, and when I start that job. Because virtually every company does not give you goals when you start your job.
Yep. Sure.
They wait till the end of the year, you get a review, they single-handedly get to decide whether you performed or not. And then they give you goals for the next year. Right? So we want 90-day goals. And we got a humble close, and we're letting them know we don't just want to do well this next year, we want to do well right away, and we have high expectations. My favorite question, Curtis Walters gets partial credit for, he brought the core of that up, we keep changing it. So this is the list of things we've talked about, right? This would make me happy if you would do some of this. A list of 25 of who is your board of directors. Send an email to 10 of them, try it out. You don't need to send it to all 5 of them if you're uncomfortable with that process. Call 5 of them. Have coffee with 2 of them. Or at least arrange coffee. It doesn't have to be next week. Take 10 questions, draft your answers. Don't write bullets. Write every word you would say if someone asked you that question. Every word you would say. Come up with 3 star stories. come back next week, the interview guys keep threatening that someone is going to come with real star stories to have reviewed by them. And interview questions, which is where I think we should, I don't know if you may not yet feel it, but I tell you on this interview thing, it is the single biggest thing in 5.5 years of doing this that you can improve on. Networking's hard. We're going to bumble around and make some mistakes, go in great places, hopefully getting that short stack, get that opportunity. But it's so much work to get that opportunity that to be as prepared as we can be for that interview is something totally in our control. Yeah, you got to come here and get someone to review it and find someone that you know that's an HR person or hiring manager or good at this process to critique it. And some of the questions are always going to be job dependent. So if you're looking at multiple jobs, you know, some portion of these questions will have to be honed, much like a resume might have to be customized. But the ability to deal with your interview process, like the resume process, will make you 25% better conservatively. I'm 100% sure of that. Yes?
To put it in perspective, one of the ladies on Tuesday night, the interview team on Tuesday night, to put it in perspective, they said this 1 hour interview could be the most important hour of your life for the next 2 to 3 years. So to your point. And I want to thank you for making it, you know, you've cut back on the star stories and on the board of directors is like 10 times smaller, so I want to thank you because you're making it much more doable and you're making it much more, you know, I'm much more, before I was a little overwhelmed 3 months ago, now I'm like, I can do this. So thank you.
You can do it. And maybe someone who's had success with it will come up and do a little victory lap and talk about how they extended their network and had real positive feedback from it, because we need to celebrate the little steps and the big steps all along the way. But I think I know it's getting to be 9:30. I want to let you guys go unless there's any important last questions before we depart. This will be up on Meetup, Dave. Yeah. Does everyone know how to find the presentations on Meetup? So if you're in our Meetup group and you go to, I think it's Other, and then under Other there's all the presentations. So we have, I don't know what the number is, Dave. I bet there's more, yeah, more. So there's probably 100 or more presentations. You pick a subject, and we have some really great presentations there on virtually every subject that's happened. And next week is always our busiest week of the quarter. We have our recruiter panel. For those of you who've been to them before, but we get 3 recruiters up on stage, and we get to grill them for 90 minutes. So it's always fun, it's always insightful, and we also, it's week 1, so we have some great breakouts, and obviously these great tables, so invite your friends, and we look forward to seeing you all. Have a great week.
Thank you. One round of applause.
Shall we stand to honor God? Thank you, Father, for all you have done tonight, all the wisdom and knowledge that you have given us through your servant that you have stood before us tonight. You rock. We love you for that. As we go to our homes of abode tonight, please overshadow us with your protection and your love. Meet us there before we get there. And if we have an opportunity once again to meet in this manner, as we did at the beginning of this, we now give you praise, we give you honor, and we give you glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good night, everybody.